Well, welcome. It is a gorgeous Friday afternoon as I was driving over and putting the top down at 73 degrees, and I'm thinking, public speaking, can I just call Megan and say I got lost? No, here we are. We're going to have some fun for the next hour, and then we'll have a little more fun with an exercise that Megan has to put some of this into practice. So, how many of you thought you were getting Alan Alda this afternoon? All right, sorry to disappoint. Did you see him last week when he was on campus? Okay, so I see one nod, two hands, and sort of a maybe. That's good. The good news is, those of you who saw Alan, a lot of this is going to be repetitive. There is only so much you can say about public speaking. I am no Hawkeye Pierce. My stories aren't nearly as fun as his. I'm not in an ambulance coming off of Machu Picchu. He told some great tales as a way of illustrating how to make your points. But we're still going to talk a lot about public speaking and the art and practice of overcoming your fear, understanding your audience. How you say it matters. We're actually going to talk a little bit about why that is so important, and in fact, almost more important than what you say is how you say it. It's a frightening thing for scientists and engineers to come to grips with. And what you say is, of course, important too, because that's what you're there to do. So, glossophobia, everybody knows, that's actually the technical term for fear of public speaking. It comes from Greek, and it is, you'll hear people say that's everybody's number one fear, right? What are some of your greatest fears? Getting run over by a train, getting up in front of an audience and talking, getting run over by a train while you're in front of an audience talking. It's really a true fear. And this is a sort of a diagram of a study that was done at Chapman University. When I heard that public speaking was, everybody's number one fear, I'm going, well, that can't really be true. I mean, we've got the prospect of, tensions in North Korea. We've got Congress shutting down government. We've got a stock market that's going crazy. Aren't those real fears? So the Chapman study went and looked at, there's a series of areas, and you start compartmentalizing. Yes, my fear of government shutting down and not getting a paycheck, that falls under the government category, but way up here under personal fears, in fact, tight spaces, clowns, and public speaking are people's big fears, and they really get afraid of clowns doing public speaking in tight spaces. So, this kind of reminds you a little bit, if you watch Seinfeld, one of his quips about public speaking was that if you're invited to a funeral, it is much better to be in the casket than delivering the eulogy. Okay, well, it worked for him. But 15 million American adults say they suffer from social anxiety and are afraid of public speaking. And how many in the room here feel they're one of those 30 million? Okay, so everybody here feels that way. I don't know about the folks online. Here's a little fun clip. Even Jimmy Kimmel has this fear.
James Jimmy Kimmel, a man on the precipice of hosting the Oscars, an opportunity to be the toast of the town. Or a chance to bomb so fantastically everywhere he goes, people would say, look at Sucky Sucko. He had his shot, and man did he blow it in front of billions.
This is not really helping, Morgan.
Well, fine. Do your own damn pep talk.
Okay, so that is sort of the conundrum. Are we an opportunity to shine or an opportunity to blow it in front of billions? And we're going to go over my form of pep talk today so that you all can go out and, if not host the Oscars, at least the next time somebody says, so what are you studying? You'll be able to deliver a perfect 90-second elevator pitch that says exactly what you're studying, why it's important to them, and you'll make them go away going, wow, I really want to support that. That's our goal for today. It's a little ambitious. We'll settle for half of that. So when you look back at public speaking and you try to understand what are the underlying fears, there's a couple of schools of thought. And a lot of academic researchers feel that it's really an evolutionary fear. And it comes from our survival instinct and the fact that we want to be a part of the herd because we feel safer and protected. If the woolly mammoth's going to come along and steal somebody, it's not going to be me because I'm hiding behind you, you're hiding behind her, and we're safe. But when I'm up here in front of an audience, I'm all alone and I'm looking out into a sea of faces, and you all are not necessarily going to jump between me and the mastodon. That's that primal fear that researchers think. There's also a 2009 study by a social psychologist named Matthias Weiser who measured participants' responses to various stimulus. And the upshot of this is that we tend to focus when we're anxious more on angry faces than pleasant or supportive ones. And so to induce anxiety into his test group, he told half of the group that they were going to have to get up in front of the group and talk. They got all anxious, and then he showed them pictures of angry people, neutral people, and happy people, and they responded far more energetically to the angry faces than to anything else. And then he took a control group and he didn't tell them they had to do public speaking. They were perfectly happy, and they didn't react to any of the faces more than another. So when you're anxious, for some reason, and I'm thinking of there in the back, that one angry face, it just can't get out of your mind, and you feel that. And now you're off your game, you feel distressed, and it goes back to that primal fear of, I'm up here alone and you're mad at me. Don't call the mastodons. What is our big fear?
The time to speak the truth frankly and
TV
boldly.
was not always high definition.
Nor need we shrink from honestly facing conditions in our country today. This great nation will endure as it has endured, will revive and will prosper. So first of all, let me assert my firm belief that the only thing we have to fear is fear itself. Nameless, unreasoning, unjustified terror, which paralyzes needed effort to convert retreat into advance.
Nameless, unreasoning, unjustified terror. Does that sum up public speaking for you? Well, it summed up the state of the country at Franklin Roosevelt's 1932 inauguration. That was part of his speech. The only thing we have to fear is fear itself was on the heels of stock market crash, Great Depression, and the fact that he had to give an inaugural address. So research into performance anxiety in music has shown that there are 4 state changes that fear can cause, and perhaps you have experienced one or all of these when you get up in front of a class, say, or in front of a group and have to talk. Emotion, you start to feel nervous, you feel stressed, worried. What am I going to do? I'm going to forget my words. I'm going to lose concentration. I'm going to blank out up there. I just know it's going to happen. And you start to sweat. Behavior, you start trembling, fidgeting. You're moving in an awkward way. You're coming around and you're starting to close in. And physiology, your breathing becomes a little more upset. You got to calm yourself down. You may even have an upset stomach. You may want to leave the room. So part of what we're going to do today is work our way through these. There are ways. There are some real ways to overcome this so that you can get on the mastodon instead of being eaten by it. and move forward. So, I want to talk a little bit about believing in yourself and imposing confidence. And I have to confess that some of this work is done by a professor at Harvard, Amy Cuddy, and he's come into question lately. There's some upheaval between a 2010 study that she did in the field of social psychology and some questioning that came out between 2015 and 2016 on the veracity of some experiments. And we'll talk a little bit about that, but so much of what I have learned over the years, both in terms of public speaking, in terms of acting and getting up in front of an audience, and in terms of coaching athletes to perform at their peak, a lot of that has to do with envisioning yourself being a success and sort of talking your way into that. So whether it's completely founded in science, that might be open to question, but for many people, believing in an end result, picturing yourself being successful, does seem to work for a lot of us. And so we'll talk a little bit about that. Here's some folks who, yeah, if you walk into a room, and I'm looking at this group before I got here, and some folks are, they're closing in, and I'm not sure I belong here, and I don't want to take up too much space. We have a fellow in our office who does a lot of public speaking, and when he does, what he usually does, he just kind of folds himself in and even sometimes crouches down. He makes himself as small as possible, when what you're really thinking about is, I'm filling the room, you all are looking at me, do something, I'm going to shrink. We need to be able to overcome that. And you look at some of these poses, not all of you are doing them, some are, but when you do this, you actually begin to feel small. And when you feel small, you begin to act small. It is really tough when you're up here in front of a group, if you're feeling and acting small, to carry the room. So part of what Amy's study was, let's look at some power poses. You've seen the picture of the athlete in the track who wins the race, and they raise their arms. Usain Bolt comes to mind, the great 100 and 200 meter specialist from Jamaica. Usually it's about 10 yards before the finish line. He's already got his arms up because everybody's in the dust. They did a study that people who are blind from birth, when they do something well, tend to raise their arms and open themselves up. There's no social cue anywhere to do that. They've been blind from birth, and yet that's their instinctual reaction to winning. I feel powerful. I am a winner. That's one of some power poses. I don't know if you've gone into an office and sit down with your professor, and he or she will sort of lean back in their chair, and they seem to take up more of the room because they're in the power position. You sit there, me, when I was in college, the more the professor would take up the room, the smaller I would become. Now we can have a duel. I'll sit there, I'll put my hands behind my head, and I'll match you gesture for gesture until we decide that you still know more than I do. But Amy's study in 2010 was to take a group of folks and have them hold a power pose for 3 minutes. There's Wonder Woman, which works for Wonder Man too. I am powerful, hands on hip, just try to knock me off stride. There's the Victory. And if you held that for 3 minutes, and then what they did was they took a cotton swab and they swabbed the inside of the mouth, and they were measuring 2 things. Testosterone, which is the power hormone in your system, and cortisol, which is the stress, the flight. And what she found was that pre-testing compared to post-testing when you did this in her group. The folks who did the power poses had heightened testosterone and lowered cortisol, which is much better for someone who's up here doing public speaking, to be on their game instead of the stress or flight running through their body. Now, they haven't replicated it. That's what's come into question. Her control group wasn't that big. She's made a lot of money in a book, and her TED Talk is the second most popular TED Talk on the internet. I'll make no value of that. I just point that out that a lot of people between the time she started talking about this, when they went into job interviews, they'd get there 5 minutes early, they'd go into the bathroom, lock the stall, and go, yes, I'm gonna ace this interview. And they felt powerful, and they probably interviewed better as a result, even if we can't necessarily say it is a scientifically proven fact. So here's Amy. She's going to tell you a little bit about her story. She's going to illustrate a couple of points that we'll talk about after this little clip.
Tell you a little story about being an imposter and feeling like I'm not supposed to be here. When I was 19, I was in a really bad car accident. I was thrown out of a car, rolled several times. I was thrown from the car, and I woke up in a head injury rehab ward. And I had been withdrawn from college, and I learned that my IQ had dropped by 2 standard deviations, which was very traumatic. I knew my IQ because I had identified with being smart, and I had been called gifted as a child. So I'm taken out of college. I keep trying to go back. They say, you're not going to finish college. Like, just, you know, there are other things for you to do, but that's not going to work out for you. So I really struggled with this, and I have to say, having your identity taken from you, your core identity, and for me it was being smart, having that taken from you, there's nothing that leaves you feeling more powerless than that. So I felt entirely powerless. I worked and worked and worked, and I got lucky and worked and got lucky and worked. Eventually I graduated from college. It took me 4 years longer than my peers, and I convinced someone, my angel advisor, Susan Fisk, to take me on, and so I ended up at Princeton, and I was like, I am not supposed to be here. I am an imposter. And the night before my first year talk, and the first year talk at Princeton is a 20-minute talk to 20 people. That's it. I was so afraid of being found out the next day that I called her and said, I'm quitting. She was like, you are not quitting, because I took a gamble on you and you're staying. You're going to stay, and this is what you're going to do. You're going to fake it. You're going to do every talk that you ever get asked to do. You're just going to do it and do it and do it, even if you're terrified and just paralyzed and having an out-of-body experience, until you have this moment where you say, oh my gosh, I'm doing it. Like, I have become this. I am actually doing this. So that's what I did. 5 years in grad school. A few years, I'm at Northwestern. I moved to Harvard. I'm at Harvard. I'm not really thinking about it anymore, but for a long time I had been thinking, not supposed to be here, not supposed to be here. So at the end of my first year at Harvard, a student who had not talked in class the entire semester, who I had said, look, you gotta participate or else you're gonna fail, came into my office. I really didn't know her at all. And she came in totally defeated, and she said, I'm not supposed to be here. And that was the moment for me, because 2 things happened. One was that I realized, oh my gosh, I don't feel like that anymore. I don't feel that anymore, but she does, and I get that feeling. And the second was, she is supposed to be here. Like, she can fake it, she can become it. So I was like, yes, you are. You are supposed to be here, and tomorrow you're gonna fake it, you're gonna make yourself powerful, and you're gonna, and you're gonna go into the classroom, and you are gonna give the best comment ever, And she gave the best comment ever, and people turned around and they were like, oh my God, I didn't even notice her sitting there, She comes back to me months later, and I realized that she had not just faked it till she made it, she had actually faked it till she became it. So she had changed. And so I want to say to you, don't fake it till you make it. Fake it till you become it.
So that's Amy Cuddy. What did you like? Did that capture you? Why? She did something that Alan Alda said you always want to do. She told a story. She made it an emotional story. It allowed you to connect. And it ended positively. So those kinds of things work really well on a speech. I can show you videos all day. I'm not going to. You can go home and peruse speaking tips on the internet. There's a ton of them. Everybody's got a trick or two, or from the internet, somebody had 27 tips to overcome your fear. I don't know about you, but 27 is an overwhelming number of things to try to keep in the back of my mind. I would probably get so tongue-tied trying to remember if I'm doing number 16 or number 22 that I'd never get the speech done. So I found one that was only 13 ways to overcome your fear of public speaking and win the room. I want an added bonus. And it's less than half. 11 easy ways to overcome your fear of public speaking. You could have stayed home and watched that. 6 ways to conquer your fear of public speaking. Now we're getting down into the realm where I can at least remember, and here we are, overcoming the fear of public speaking in 5 easy minutes. What am I going to do with the next 30? Today we're going to focus on 3 things. What you say, how you say it, and who you say it to. And these are in inverse order of what I think is the most important considerations for public speaking, or at least the first thing you want to pay attention to is who you say it to, whether it's a room full of minions or you grew up like I did with public speaking classes and they told you just picture everybody in their underwear. And that was just a positively frightening thought for me. So I'd rather picture minions. Y'all are really cute, by the way. So a couple of dynamics on speaking models, and this is Aristotle's, which is that it starts and ends with the speaker. The speaker knows everything, and so the speaker's job is to impart all that he or she knows to you, and that you will receive that, and then go forth and do well. Now, what happens if you're not in a mood to receive my knowledge? What happens if I am a Republican congressman from Alabama talking about the evils of climate science to a class at UC Davis? We're going to have a real disconnect in terms of audience, how the audience hears, even if you grant me that maybe I'm making a rational argument in a limited sense, you're not going to grant me even that because that's not your disposition or your mood. So we're going to look at a different way, which is to start and consider the audience first. Who are they? Why are they there? Why are they listening to this? What do they care about? How are they going to take your message? What do they want to do with it? What are they afraid of? Are they listening to this with through a fear filter or a chip on their shoulder, or are they perceiving some degree of alienation from you at the start? And what is their mood when you speak? Are they closed in? Are they open and receptive? I made the assumption that you all were going to be at least somewhat receptive because this was a class in public speaking and I was going to talk about public speaking and I wasn't going to offend too many of you in the process. We were going to be open, we were going to have a good discussion, and we were going to learn some tricks. But what if I had come out and talked about how you say it first and not made a connection with you and put up this picture? Do we feel like we want to hear anything this guy has to say? Well, certainly not with body language like that. Now, be open. Take those filters down for a minute. It's the same guy, but wouldn't you rather be talking with this one? So it is the gestures, the facial expressions that go with what you say that can help reinforce your message or undermine it. More than 90% of our meaning or intent is conveyed through non-verbal communication. 55% of it is body language. We're going to talk about body language and what you should be doing when you're up in front of a room. 38% is vocal. And I know somebody wrote in one of the things that they were hoping is, how do I improve my public speaking if I have a not a really good voice? We'll talk a little bit about that. And only 7% of what people take away is what you actually said. It's the verbal, it's the words you use. And I will tell you, not tested this in any scientific way, but there are many times I have gotten off a stage after giving a discussion on politics or government or water supply to rooms large and small, and I've gone, oh man, I forgot to tell them this, I forgot to tell them that, and I really messed up on this. And what do all of them say? Wow, that was really good. We learned a lot. Because they don't know what I left out. They don't know that I thought I messed something up. And they don't know the fears that I brought. All they know was it worked for them. And they learned something. So a lot of that comes from verbal cues. Whether you're the same people, the French president and the German chancellor, just depends on the day whether you're wagging fingers or hugging. But we know immediately that one conversation went well, and the other, probably, they were not saying, you're number one in my eyes. So let's talk a little bit about nonverbal behavior, eye contact. One of the things people will tell you early on in public speaking is make sure you make eye contact with everybody in the room. And what do you see beginning speakers do? They turn themselves into oscillating fans. They just go back and forth, and they actually make eye contact with absolutely nobody, but I've sprayed the entire room, right? I'm looking at you, I'm looking at you, and I'm waking up Brittany.
I'm tweeting about it.
I'm just picking on poor Brittany. So establish eye contact, and don't keep looking at the same person. You found that one friendly face in the audience. I'm going to talk to you. No, I'm going to talk to all of you at some point. You're all going to feel that I looked at you, that we had a conversation. Now, when Alan Alda was here on Wednesday, he talked about going to the hospital in Peru, and he had a world-famous surgeon who was going to have to deliver him some bad news. He did not have appendicitis. He had actually a bad section of intestine. It was going to have to be cut out. And he leaned in, looked Alan in the eye, and he said, your problem is with your bowel, and I'm going to take two good ends, and I'm going to put them together. And in Hawkeye Pierce fashion, he looks up and he says, oh, you mean an end-to-end anastomosis? Had the doctor said that to most people, they would have gotten even more afraid because we're using big words and I don't know what it means, but I'm pretty sure it's not good. He made it simple. He made eye contact. He made you understand that he cared, and he said it in really simple terms. That's the essence of communication, whether you're doing it in front of an audience at the Mondavi Hall, or you're doing it in a classroom, or you're one-on-one with your best friend or your professor. Facial expressions, they convey emotions. And an example from just yesterday, we're at a hearing in the State Water Resources Control Board. It's highly charged. It's a very political and legal subject, and passions are running high on either side. And the director of the Department of Fish and Game got up and was making a very strong and solid defense of his approval for the project. And sitting behind him was the director of Water Resources, and she was grimacing. So, was the one undercutting the message of the other? A very strong defense of her project, and she's grimacing. What did I pay attention to? Obviously, I got sidetracked by the grimace, as most people would. So when you're speaking, make sure that your expressions don't undercut your message, and in fact, they can help convey it. Space. You ever get, really nervous when somebody comes up and invades your space and says, "Hi, how you doing?" Well, I do. That was very uncomfortable for me, and I apologize. I like to have my space around me, but there are times when you want to lean in close because you want somebody to know that you care, that what you're saying is very important. Voice will do that too. Do you ever notice that sometimes when I start to talk softly and you have to strain the ear? That must be an important point, because you're now having to listen. Whereas if I'm just going on, you can tune out. Same thing with posture. Are you upright? Are you open? We're going to go over some of these things. Are you inviting? Are you someone I want to talk to? When Alan Alda talks about public speaking is the art of dating, it really is. It's that first impression. The evening's either going to go really well or really badly or somewhere in between, but you'll know pretty early on whether it's time to phone a friend or I can at least bear through this, or oh my God, I can't wait till the next. And tones and sounds, so that's voice, that's how your inflection. Are you emphasizing particular points? Let's see if we can.
Came up to me and said, "Son, it's okay. You flunked your exams. You already got arrested."
One of the most important things that you need to realize is when you get nervous, you try to cover your vital organs. And that's why you would see a lot of speakers sometimes fold their hands, bring their hands in front of them, and that's a sign of nervousness. Great speakers keep their body open, so there is no barrier between you and me.
Raise your hand if you have an emotional mother. Let me see. Put them all together, you get mama.
And something that when you're starting out, you got to be very conscious about is keep your body open. Here's tip number 2. Have your palms open. Do this exercise with me. Take a look at your palms. Turn them around. Take a look at the inside of your palms again. What side relaxes your eye? If you really concentrate, when you look at the inside of your palm, your eye relaxes. And a lot of great speakers, they open their palms towards the audience, showing a more openness. And that allows the audience to connect with the speaker better, as opposed to showing the back of your hand.
Ladies and gentlemen, today I'm a dreamer, I'm a speaker, and I learned the unfailing quality of unconditional love from my wife.
Number 3, get comfortable with the stage. When you're comfortable on the stage that you're speaking on, your body is free to move about, use body language. But if you're not comfortable with that stage, and if you feel foreign on that stage, what happens is your body language starts to constrict and you start to cover your body up.
And when a son sees a mother cry tears of shame, that's a life-changing moment. She looked at me and said, "Son, I want you to be a better man."
Whatever you do, don't touch the podium. As soon as you do that, you're going to be leaning on it, you're going to be shaking that podium, and you will be doing all sorts of things on the podium. So what you do is you keep a comfortable distance between you and the podium. You can keep your notes on it, but you can use your hands to gesture. Don't rest your hands on the podium. So keep a distance, and you can gesture, use body language as you want from a little distance from the podium.
Okay, I'm going to pick on one thing because I were an English major once. This is a lectern. A podium is a raised surface. So I'm hiding behind the lectern. Often we see people do this. Sometimes the more they speak, the lower they get, till they've kind of melted into the lectern. So you come out, don't be afraid of this space. We can have a conversation. I don't need to hide behind a desk. I don't need to hide behind a lectern. I'm going to keep my arms open. I'm inviting. It's the only gesture that doesn't match. Show me the front of your hand. That was Dhananjay Hederachi. He was the winner in 2015 of Toastmasters International, their international speaking contest. It's a 10-minute prepared speech at their annual convention. You rise up through the ranks to do that. Quite a good speaker. So let's do a little discussion on what you say as well. How do we deal with this? Somebody wrote in and said, I want to know how to deliver a speech, but I don't, and I want to practice it, but I don't want to have to write a whole speech to do it. And so I'll give you a couple of tips. One of them, and this is a trick from Toastmasters International, when they do meetings, you do a lot of public speaking. I'd encourage you, find Toastmasters, find Dale Carnegie. If you really want to become and practice public speaking, these are good supportive ways to do that. Toastmasters clubs meet throughout almost every area of the world. They meet weekly or every other week, and it's a supportive way to practice public speaking. You'll learn to give speeches. You'll learn to evaluate speeches, which is in fact giving a speech, just based on facts that were introduced. And they do a fun thing called table topics, which is a 2 to 3 minute, fully developed speech, opening, body, conclusion, on a topic that I just told you about. You've got 30 seconds, go. That is, I think, one of the most intimidating things that you work through there. You don't know what the question is. You got 20 seconds to think about it, and you've got to deliver a fully formed speech. It's good practice. It'll petrify you at first, and pretty soon you'll realize it is no different than when the boss calls on you in a meeting and says, Keith, what do you think about that? And you've got to deliver the goods. Or when you see a friend on the street and they say, so what did you think about the concert last night? Here's what I think. It's no different. It's public speaking writ small. So, choosing your message, you're going to learn a little bit more in the exercise later, how to help do that. But focus on a core message. Start with what you want folks to take away. What do I want you to know? And then we'll work backwards. Once I know what I want you to know, how do I convince you that that's right? And remember the difference between Aristotle and the audience-based method of communication. What I want you to know, how I deliver that, how I organize it, how I get you to understand. I want to run through the filters that I think you may have up so that I can communicate with you in a way that you'll understand. If I got up and speaking to a room of non-scientists and every other word was Latin or jargon, we would not be communicating. But I would have made all of my points. You would know that I'm a learned individual, but we would not have connected, and you would go away not able to act on what I said. So as you develop your structure, as you organize, make sure that you consider the audience, consider the filters, make sure that you reach them. Introduction, body, and conclusion. I'm going to tell you what I'm going to say. I'm going to say what I say, and then I'm going to tell you what I told you. I want you, repetition is a really good way to get somebody to remember something. Now, we joke a lot. Part of my world for a long time was going over to the legislature and trying to convince folks to vote a certain way on a certain bill. And these are all very busy people. They've got people coming in all day telling them this or that about whatever subject. How do you make yourself stand out? And if I gave you a voluminous report and tried to summarize it, they would just tune out and they'd be on to the next thing. 3 points that I want you to consider. No more than 3, and you will have successful communication. You might be able to stretch it to 5. I know there are often nuances, and when I get into discussions with science and engineers, they say, well, you've made it too simple. You forgot about this nuance. Make sure that they understand the audience too.
Be honest. You enjoyed that, didn't you? Now, please do me a favor. Recite that entire title off the top of your head right now. Go. Not all at once. Wait a minute. Do you mean to tell me that you cannot remember all 57 of the words in that title? Neither can I. But do you know what that proves? Just because you say more doesn't mean people will remember what you say. Thank you, contest chair, Toastmasters and guests. Outside of a Toastmasters club, I actually do not talk a lot. I've always been called a quiet person. In fact, if you went back in time to my college and told the other students that one day Aaron Beverly will speak in front of over 1,000 people at a Toastmasters convention, they would say, wow, that's amazing. Aaron can talk. And ever since I was a kid, people have always told me, Aaron, you need to say more. Aaron, you need to speak up more. Aaron, people won't remember what you say unless you say more. And I remember thinking to myself, is that true? When my mom said she believed in me, what can you say to that? Those words were spoken 5 years ago, and I still remember them. Michelle, she may remember her mother's words for the rest of her life because a few words, they can touch your heart. So ladies and gentlemen, I believe that it's okay to be a quiet person, to be soft-spoken, to not say that much. Because when it comes to being remembered, I've learned, and you've proven, just because you say more doesn't mean people will remember what you say. So let's make the words we do say count. You'll be surprised how long people remember a few words.
So that was the runner-up. You've now seen two of the best speakers from 2015 and 2016. And no, it wasn't that good. We're not going to play it again. So in conclusion, when you get to the end of your speech, make sure you restate your major points. What do you want people to take away? Encourage the audience to do something. I want you to practice speaking. I want you to work on gestures. I want you, as unscientific as it may be, to practice power poses occasionally, to feel good about yourself. I don't want you to say, okay, any questions? How often do we see speakers do that? They'll just go, okay, I'm kind of done. Any questions? No, thanks, bye. Stop, smile, step aside, but don't dash out of the room. Here's a fun way, I think, to summarize how to take complex subjects and try to boil them down in ways that we understand. This is scientists making fun of themselves a little bit at an annual thing that they do.
Get set for something special, the 24/7 lectures. We have invited several of the world's top thinkers to tell us very briefly what they're thinking about. Each 24/7 lecturer will explain her or his topic twice. First, a complete technical description in 24 seconds, and then, after a brief pause, a clear summary. That's a clear summary that anyone can understand in 7 words. The first 24/7 lecture will be delivered by 1993 Nobel laureate in physiology or medicine, Rich Roberts. His topic, clock genes. First, a complete technical description of the subject in 24 seconds. On your mark, get set, go.
The original circadian locomotive output cycle's caput or clock gene encodes a basic helix pass transcription factor called clock that is one of a family of genes that control circadian rhythm in mammals. More than 20 genes are involved with such catchy names as period and cryptochrome. The products of many of them are activated on others in success.
And now a clear summary that anyone can understand in 7 words. On your mark, get set, go.
Clock genes are responsible for jet lag.
The final 24/7 lecture will be delivered by the creator of FYFD, the world's most popular website about fluid dynamics, Nicole Sharp. Her topic, fluid dynamics. First, a complete technical description of the subject in 24 seconds. On your mark, get set, go.
Fluid dynamics, a branch of classical mechanics derived from 19th century hydrodynamics and hydrology that recapitulates the locomotion of mutable substances, governed by a series of unsteady, nonlinear partial differential equations of the second order, including continuity, energy, Navier-Stokes, and in some cases Maxwell's equations and multi-species reactions. Subdisciplines include rheology, combustion, granular mechanics, air elasticity, magnetohydrodynamics, hemodynamics, lubrication theory, and quantum hydrodynamics.
And now a clear summary that anyone can understand in 7 words. On your mark, get set, go.
If it can flow, we study it.
Okay, that was from the 2016 Ig Nobel Prize Awards. Scientists having some fun with themselves, but I love that exercise, both because it makes you take a very complex subject and gives you 24 seconds to be complex and understandable to at least those in your field, and then it gives you 7 seconds to make me understand what the heck you just said. So, over the last hour, we've talked about ways to overcome fear. The only thing we have to fear is fear itself. It is a genuine and evolutionary emotion. But if you practice and you're open and you connect with your audience, maybe you won't feel quite so alone up here and you'll succeed. And even if you do feel alone, the room is yours. Nobody's walking out. Go with it. You own it. It's yours. And you're conveying information to folks. Understand your audience. Make sure that you're coming into a room and you know the dynamics. Maybe there's 1 or 2 people who are going to be troublemakers. There's often in any audience, there's somebody, particularly because I deal in community meetings, and I deal often with people who are upset about either what we're doing or what we're not doing. And so there's one or two folks who are going to be really mad, and I'm never going to connect with them no matter what, but I at least want to neutralize them and discuss some rational thoughts with the rest of the audience. How you say it matters. And I know somebody said, well, what happens if I go blank up there? I have this whole speech and I just forgot how to get from point A to point B. Well, what do I do? And it's okay to pause. You saw Aaron Beverly use pauses very dramatically. It pulls your audience in. If every other word is a 10-second pause, maybe not so effective. But if you're varying the timing of your speech, if you're using pauses for dramatic effect, nobody's going to know if that was a dramatic pause or an, oh my God, I have no idea what's coming next pause. But studies have shown you can hold a blank for up to like 30 seconds and the audience will not feel uncomfortable. They'll start to inch forward. They're going, what's coming next? And you take off in a new direction. And it's okay if the new direction isn't the direction that you rehearsed last night. What's written down in your notes, because only you know that you made a 180-degree turn or you made a 90-degree right angle and got yourself back on track. So when you come to that panicked moment, tell a story, bridge the gap, you'll get back on track. It really does come back to you. It certainly comes back to you with practice. And then lastly, what you say is important too. Make sure that it's a beginning, middle, and end, that there's an action embedded there. This afternoon, the action is going to be an exercise, but it's really a lifelong exercise of practice and openness and making sure that your gestures are in sync with what you're talking about. I did not show, because I think we loaded, I have so many versions of this. There was a clip that I sometimes show on politicians who will be making a point and using facial expressions that undercut it, like, I am the most sincere candidate I know. And I'm somehow undercutting that message by being shifty and shrugging. It's hard to make sure that you are believable, but if you want to be believable, align your gestures, be open, be trustworthy, have a conversation. Folks will receive it a lot better. Thank you very much.
So does anyone have any questions for Steve? He'll be around for after the activity. But yes.
Deathly afraid. I did not like speaking in college. I went straight to the back row. If I had to raise my hand and show I was present, that was an exercise, let alone answer anything. Years later, I was working for a newspaper, and I was the beginning reporter. The newspaper thought, well, one of the best ways to connect with the community was if we had people go out and speak at service clubs so that they understood what we were doing. I paid you $20, you got a free lunch. Everything was good except getting up in front of a group of Rotarians or Kiwanians. Nothing wrong with them, but they're weird people. No, they are, you're in public. And boy, I was scared to death of that. And what we did was we organized a Toastmasters Club, which is really a support group for those of us who wanted to make the extra money. And we worked through that. And practice, steadily growing audiences. Today my wife will tell you there isn't an audience that I'm not afraid to get up in front of, except what she doesn't know is I'm always terrified. Driving over here today, I'm rehearsing the excuses on why I couldn't make it. Y'all would get an extra 2 hours. It's a gorgeous day. You wouldn't mind, right? I have yet to not feel just that momentary panic when I get up in front of an audience. But it's like playing sports. It's like playing an instrument. Once you get the first couple of notes out, once you get the first play or two under your belt, you settle in and you'll be successful. Yeah.
What are like in regards to Delta science? What are just like some of the biggest like pitfalls that you've seen in like scientific presentations where they're trying to be trying to affect policy or like impact people's, you know what I mean?
I do. I'll tell you, my first quip is where they're trying to affect policy. The biggest fault I've found is they're not doing it. Science needs to be relevant. This is a question that Alan Alda addressed as well. If you want people to understand the effects of your work, you have to explain it to them. And you have to explain it to them in a way that they can relate to. So if I'm talking about climate change, or if I'm talking about flows through the Delta, I have to be able to talk about it in a way that resonates not with me, not with my study as written, but in a way that you, the policy, the decision maker, the water supply. If I'm making an argument in favor of more flows for smelt, particular times of the year, and I'm doing that to a water district that has customers and it's springtime and farmers are on the hook for crops they've already planted, I have to be able to make that somewhat relatable to them so that they can understand the trade-offs. It's not a realm that is comfortable for scientists to think like a policymaker, but in order to have a good conversation, you really need to understand how the other person thinks. And then we can talk about what I found, and you can tell me what implications that might have for you.
Keith, you had a great analogy earlier that you explained to me about not leaving your audience behind. Do you want to reiterate that?
No. Yeah. There are several exercises for how do I get in sync with you, but the one that resonates with me is, you get two people and you're driving somewhere and you say, follow me. You get your car, they get theirs, they start out behind you, I'm coming up, the light turns yellow, what do? I go through. They can't go through, they're at the red. I'm going, why didn't you follow me? Because I wasn't thinking about you. When I got to that yellow, I wasn't thinking, well, if I get through, they'll get stuck. I was thinking, why didn't you hurry up and get through there too? I didn't give you enough time. So it's really a good communication is understanding how somebody else is going to react to what you say, what they bring to the table, and it is your responsibility, not necessarily theirs, to bring them along if you want to have good communication.
Go ahead.
Other than like practice and trying to do it and keep going, whatever, do you have any tips, and obviously this is relevant to people, for people who may have shaky voices when they're giving talks, therefore very obvious that they're a little bit nervous? I mean, like, for a friend.
And I will tell you that I had a voice, I have a deep voice. I have a voice for radio, a face for television. Not a face for television, I have a voice for television. And practice helps, because the more public speaking you do, the more comfortable you are, the easier it is to talk. We have little verbal cues like ums and like, and I kid my daughter who graduates this year from college that like everything is like a third like in every like sentence, and I get distracted by those likes. So you begin to scrub those out if you're doing public speaking. And remember that pauses are your friend, and your voice will carry through. The less nervous you are, the less shaky your voice is going to be. And it may never be deep, and it may never fill the church completely. But remember that the softer tones draw your audience in and make them listen to you. So you have an advantage of that. And I had a guy who I worked with many years. He was one of the smartest hydrologic engineers I know. And he was really good at policy. And we'd be debating an issue around the table, and Don would not say anything until the very end. He'd listen to all the arguments. And then in a very quiet voice, he'd make everybody strain to hear a perfect summary of what he heard and why it meant you should do this, and off we'd go to do that. But he would say that as quietly as he could. The entire room would just drop. You've got that advantage. So work on being loud sometimes. Keep your soft, and the shakiness will work out. For your friend.
You talk about understanding your audience. What would you do in a case where your audience is both scientists and lay people, and you want to effectively communicate your message without dumbing it down and insulting scientists, or making it too complicated for the layperson?
I would tell you, gee, my calendar is full that day, but I'm sure you can find another speaker. No. That's a real conundrum, because I feel when I make things very simple that folks think I'm stupid. If I don't sprinkle technical terms, if I can't tell you hydrologic impacts in a certain slough in a particular area of the delta during certain conditions, then my whole theory of how we move water across the delta is somehow undermined for a scientific audience. But I will tell you that when I do that, it's enhanced for the lay audience who goes, wow, I never understood it like that. So I think you're always better, particularly in a mixed audience, you're always better off talking to the just above the lower denominator than you are addressing one particular segment or another. If I know that the group is split, I might make a general statement and then say, for those of you who want to know about the underlying science, we can talk about that afterwards. And I hope like heck I do know the underlying science.
And as a note, I think as a scientist, if you're presenting, you could have a level of confidence in your talk to know that you know your stuff. So don't feel like you're coming off as dumb when you do bring it down to a lower level. You are able to communicate it so effectively that anyone can understand, and that in itself is so powerful. So don't think that if you do dumb it down, so to say, that you're not fully conveying your point.
Somewhere between the 24-second and the 7-second
Right.
exercise.
Maybe 10 seconds. Okay, so we talked about how to not leave your audience behind, and so I have a little activity for us to do. This is something that we learned at the Alan Alda workshop, and I really want to bring that to you. So I'd like everyone to pick a partner, and we're going to do a little improv exercise, and it's called the mirroring. So everybody pick a partner, and what you're going to do is pick an A and a B. So I'll give you a second to find your partner, and then I'll give you some instructions. So Keith, would you like to be my partner to... Oh, okay, yeah, you two can be partners, that's fine. Okay, so A's, raise your hand. A's, raise your hand. Okay, so if you're an A, you're going to be a leader. So, and followers, you're going to follow your leader. So this is an exercise best standing up, so everybody stand up. Find a room, place in the room. So for, let's say, 30 seconds, A's, you're going to lead, and B's, you're going to follow. So, any questions of that? You can do any movement, your legs, arms, get creative, but tips on how to be successful is go slow so your followers can follow. All right, ready? 30 seconds on the clock. Ready, set, go. This is a nonverbal activity.
Okay, so I'll just do it and then you just mirror what I'm doing. You do the same thing. You just follow. Exactly.
Okay, now B's, now you're going to lead. Switch. B's are now leading. See if you can become perfect mirrors with no lag. Perfect mirrors. And stop. Give yourselves a round of applause. Great. So let's talk about that. B's. When your leaders were first leading, when the A's were leading, how did you feel? How was it to follow? Was it difficult?
Sort of uncomfortable in the sense that you're watching what they're doing and you want to do it correctly, but you're sort of anticipating as well where they're going. So it was interesting. It's a unique feeling.
Yeah. Did anyone find it difficult to follow? Or
This is just me, but while I'm watching what I'm doing with this hand, I'm desperately afraid she's going to do something over here.
Okay. A's, how was it to lead?
So fun.
Fun? Okay.
But you also had to think about, like, I wanted to do this, and then I was like, oh, the stream won't, like, no, it doesn't have to, like, explode. So
Yeah.
I couldn't explode.
So you're saying, like, you couldn't move as fast as you wanted to because you wanted to take care of your follower, right? Okay. So when we switched, B's, did you find it easier to lead because you knew how it felt like to be a follower? Did anyone feel that way? Yeah? Anyone else have any comments about that?
So that's where I got diabolical, because I knew how hard it was to be watching this and that. So I'd start doing this, and then I'd be doing something else.
I think you were trying to make it a challenge, but one thing that I really appreciated was that so he tended to move multiple limbs at once, but he was very consistent about how he did it. So it was always in this phrasing of pause, that both limbs move at the same pace in pause, and both limbs move. So I kind of just got within the first couple of seconds, oh, I should just keep my eyes in peripheral, and then just do that the entire time.
Right. So over time, you notice patterns developing, right? Very
And the
good.
pattern was consistent, so that helped, even though it was a challenge. It was something that I could come to anticipate and expect.
Right. So recognizing that consistency in patterns. Good. Anyone else have any comments about that? Is that fun?
I was, like, distracted by her when I was trying to lead, I think, a little bit.
Yeah?
We're buddies. We are friends. But I was, like, paying attention to her hands more than mine.
Right.
And I noticed that at a certain point.
Right. Did you guys notice a lag, or was anyone a perfect mirror?
That's a pretty good mirror.
Yeah. So let's try this one more time. 30 more seconds. I really want you to really become perfect mirrors. Take that time to slow down, wait for your partner, and really take care of them. As a leader, it's your job to make sure your follower can follow you. Okay? So let's try that one more time for 30 seconds. On your marks, get set. A's, let's have B's lead first. B's, you're leading. Ready, go. Try to be perfect mirrors.
Whoops.
All right, and let's switch. A's are now leaders.
Brings back.
And stop. Awesome job, everybody. So, how was it that time? How did you feel?
Who'd improve it?
Right, smoother, more comfortable. Anyone else have comments? Followers, how was it that time? Were you able to keep up? Was there less of a lag? Did you anticipate the patterns? Great. Okay, so thank you for participating in that. You can have a seat. I'm going to pass out a message box now. And I'd like for you to fill this out with your intended audience. And there's some boxes on you can fill out relevant to your research. If you don't have research, pick something interesting to you. Maybe it's a news article that you read recently that you want to write about or give a speech. It can even be about you, why you're an interesting person, because we all have special interests, right? So, there you go. I have an example here on the PowerPoint to show you what goes in each box, so you can refer to this. So I'm going to give you a few moments to fill this out, and then I'm going to divide you into groups, and we're going to practice giving 2-minute speeches. And then we're going to rotate. Yes, question?
And that's going to be available later online too.
Yes, it will.
I've done the message so many times. But I do that. This, and I feel like this is what the difference is.
I'm glad I put it up. So take a few moments to fill this out. Really think about who your audience is, how you can connect with them. Some pro-psychom tips. Tell a story. The story could be about you, but be about the struggles of your research. Maybe you had a problem, like a lab fail, and you want to talk about that to highlight your work. That's something you could do. Analogies. Analogies are very powerful. But don't get lost in the analogy, then you forget what you're talking about. Keep it simple.